It is 1 minute to the top of the hour. So we're just going to get ready to start. I hope that you are excited to be here. Thank you for making time in your busy day for this. I dare say it will be worth your while. So as you can see on your screens, today we're going to be learning about how our childhood affects our parenting. We are recording the event, so we'll be able to share it on our YouTube channel after this. If you would not like to be captured on the video, you can keep your camera off. Also keep your camera off, especially to avoid any distractions. Sometimes people have their camera on and then they're doing all sorts of things and it gets distracting. We would love to know everybody who's here, so please change your Zoom name if that is needed. I can see several people already have a name. We have Mary, Mombi, Joanne, the people who are here way before. They didn't want to miss a front seat. So karibuni, but there's also someone who's called number 2. So number 2, we would appreciate knowing your name. Kindly update. The instructions are on the screen. I encourage you to limit distractions during the session so you can gain as much as possible. I know we always constantly have competing interests for our time. So hopefully you'll be able to engage as fully as possible in today's session. We'll have Q&A following the presentation after our speaker, but you're welcome to post any questions, thoughts as we go along, what you'd like to share in the chat box at any time, whether you want to do it directly to me or our speaker, or if you want to post it to everybody. At the end, during Q&A, those who will not have typed and have a question, I will call on you and you can unmute so that you are able to ask your questions. So we're going to begin with the introduction of what we'll be going through today. And then I'll hand over to Dr. Mukolwe, who is already online with us, and we'll have Q&A and we will wrap it up by 4:30. So if you don't mind, let us close our eyes, bow down for a word of prayer. Lord Jesus, we thank you for this beautiful day. Thank you even that it's not coincidence that we are here, gathered here, Lord, to learn more about the children that you have bestowed on us, the blessings that you have given us, and how we can better train them in your ways for your glory. So we thank you for everybody who's here, and even those who are planning to attend. May you give them a nudge so that they remember wherever they are. And as we go through this session, I know we will realize, just like we always do, that we fall short, but may we also know that there is hope for us to change every day and to become better. So we pray that everything will go well through the session, that you will keep the networks everywhere, people are listening, and that, you know, the Mitambo will cooperate through the session. Thank you for our speaker. We pray that you touch his lips, that he may speak a message from you to us today that is going to nourish our bodies and our souls and challenge us to become more Christ-like, even in our parenting. For it's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. I would like to know that I am not talking to myself. So if you can, you know, turn on your video so I can know it's not just a device. You can also type in the chat to let us know who you are and where you are joining us from this afternoon, if you're in our time zone, East African time. So I'm looking forward to see some faces here and see in the chat, muko wapi leo hii, pande gani ya Kenya, ya Afrika, ya dunia. Even as I introduce our topic and our speaker for today, we've been doing a series on positive parenting. And you can find more discussions about this online. This week, we're specifically using the hashtag KE Prevention Week, because we are commemorating the first ever Kenyan Substance Use Prevention Week, where we get to celebrate sobriety. We get to celebrate the majority who are choosing to be alcohol and drug-free. Also, positive parenting is a hashtag that we use whenever we discuss issues of parenting. It would also be great to know those of you who may have attended a previous webinar by us. We have had positive parenting webinars, some tips for positive parenting. And the last webinar we had in November was on managing screen time. which was a very interesting session. All right, I can see people have been active in the chat. So let me see a few comments here. Andrew Ashira says, hi, Wendy. Andrew from Nyeri. We have James Karongo from Nairobi. Abe from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Nyambura is joining us from Nairobi. Edna is in Nairobi. Joanne is in Kwale. Elizabeth is in Nairobi, and she's happy to be here. Awesome. We're happy to have you all here. Susan Gugi says, greetings. Marion is in Nairobi. Lillian is joining also from Nairobi. We have Robert, who is in Masinjari Primary School in Nakuru. Rosaline Ingushia is from Nairobi. Drake Masinde, Nairobi. Lillian Nanyuki. Susan Flowers is in Nairobi. Kinuria says, hey, old friend. Susan Ngugi is in Swaziland. Lydia in Nairobi, Njoroge, Nairobi. Mombi is practicing prevention here in Nakuru. And then we have Robin from Eldoret. We also have Jerry Nairobi and Christine from Nairobi. Thank you, everybody, wherever you are. I give you a special shout out and I welcome you to today's session. And I want to just do a quick poll as we get started. Okay, there's someone who is also helping me admin. And I need them to out of my admin. So just give me 1 second there. I am reclaiming what is mine. All right. So let's see if we can get that poll out. Oy. Okay, I am having trouble with it. So there's always a plan B still. So the plan B is here. This is the question. You can raise your hand or you can type in the chat. Do you think that you are like your dad or your mom as a parent? You know, when you reflect back, right now you would say you really turned into your mom or your dad. How many yeses do we have for that one? You can raise your hand or you can type in the chat. Robert is already saying he turned out like his dad. We're not going to comment about whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. In some ways, it may be a positive thing. In some way, it may be a negative thing. I can see James is saying he's both depending on the situation. Okay. Anne says that she's more like her mom. So is Rahab. So is Christine. Anne says she's more like her dad. And then we have Yvonne, Rahab, and Christine saying they're more like mom. Joseph is more like his dad. AK is more like mom. I'm wondering if AK is female or male, because then I'm wondering if the tendency is for the woman to become like her mom and the gentleman to become like his dad. Oh, Rosalind is here, confirming she's like her dad. All right. Second question. Oh, the poll came. Oh, awesome. You can see it. Thanks, James. So there are 2 questions you can answer on your side. And the second question is, do you think it's necessary to have parenting classes or even attend parenting workshops? That's the second question that you should be able to see on your poll. So for those of you who can see it, please go ahead and click on it, give an answer. I've had very many people say, my parents didn't go to any class and I turned out just fine. Okay. Lydia is saying she turned out like her dad. Okay. So whoever is helping me with the poll, can you also help me share the results of the poll, because I cannot see from my end. Hello, fellow admin. I'm not able to see the results of the poll, so I can't share it. You're welcome to unmute and share what the stats from the poll say.
They have been shared.
For some reason, I cannot see them on my end. Do you mind reading them to me?
Right, I can help you read what the poll results
Thank
say.
you so much.
So the first question was, will you say you are parenting very similarly to the way you were parented? So the first response, oh yes, I turned out into my mom's stepdad, 51%. No way, I was determined not to, 29%.
Okay.
Never really given it much thought, 20%. Then the second question, do you think there is a need to take parenting classes or attend parenting workshops? So of course, yes, they will be helpful in developing more intentional parents, 98%, and then 2%, not really, parenting can't be taught. So those were the poll results. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much for stepping up, James. I appreciate that. So a slight majority feel that they are parenting similar to how they were parent, and there are a few who are determined not to do it, and others who I guess I just planted a thought, and hopefully you will do some more reflection on that. So we will dive in. I can see Susan in the chat saying parenting class is now a necessity. Yeah, the days we are in now, it is crazy. I think sometimes we judge parents until we become parents. Then we see that it's not as easy as we think from the outside. You're being I'm not sure who that is. Please keep your... All right. So why is it that NACADA is focusing or doing anything? So positive parenting has been shown to help to reduce the risk of children and teens. Right? Okay, I'm just going to move that person out. So positive parenting can help to reduce the risk of children and teens using drugs. And the key areas that we like to focus on in positive parenting that research has shown leads to positive results is when we talk about communication, how can we have positive communication going? And also monitoring and supervision of children's activities, family bonding, and how to discipline children. We talk about positive discipline and setting boundaries. These are 4 areas. It's not limited to these, but these are really key areas in positive parenting, and they have been linked to positive outcomes, which means that when children grow up in a family where these 4 areas are carefully looked into, then you find decreased cases of drug use, decreased problem behavior, decreased depression, aggression, and the child is happy, healthy, and grows up to be able to, socialize well with others and, fulfill or live out their dreams, have an impact in society. They are able also to increase their attainment in school, their social competence improves. So parenting is really the wheel on which society hinges. And even when we talk about alcohol and drugs, we can do a lot to prevent it and deal with it and manage it well at the home level with parenting. All right, so to introduce our speaker for today, it is really a pleasure for me to host Dr. Mukolwe, who is a scientist by training with a doctorate in parasitology. He is married to Patience Mukolwe, and together they parent 3 children and are now grandfather and mother to 2 grandchildren. He has been mentored by the navigators here in Kenya and the US on issues of relationships, parenting, and marriage. And he is the founder of Raising Future Parents, which is an organization that seeks to strengthen nations by rebuilding their families. The target is the nation, starting from the family. He is also author of Raising Future Parents. And you can see I have my copy here that even looks old-ish. He's the author of Raising Future Parents and facilitates parenting class, focusing on principle-driven parenting. He also runs marriage workshops together with his wife through the Navigators here in Kenya. So join me in welcoming Dr. Stanley Mukolwe, and as he's putting up his slides, he can also tell us how it is that someone who started as a vet, studied parasitology, is now dabbling in parenting. So Dr. Stanley Mukolwe, karibu sana, and thank you for honoring us by joining us and being our speaker today. I don't know how well you can multitask in terms of answering the question and also uploading what you have.
I think I can multitask, Wendy, and thank you so much for having me share with your audience. Please confirm that you can hear me.
I saw you, I can hear you loud and clear, and now I see your slides as well.
Very well. You asked about how does a veterinarian start doing what I'm doing? And you know, we are not slaves to our careers. Our careers give us opportunity to express our identity. And as I took my training in veterinary medicine in Kabete, and later did my master's and doctorate in Oklahoma State University, I was constantly interacting with people through the navigators who are shaping my life to be a godly person, to be a person who cares about people, to care about marriages, to care about families. And I found myself drifting there. For those who understand the Christian language, it's a calling for me, but it's really a calling and a passion. It is something that I'd love to do without exerting too much effort, because I get a lot of wind in my sail when I'm walking. So Robert Olwenyi, kindly mute.
I have muted. Sorry about that.
Thank you so much. So, and if you had more time, Wendy, I would explain in more detail how I actually made the detour. I still love vet medicine, but right now I love so much more restoring people's lives and building the nation through the family. And so this afternoon, I'll be talking about how our growing up years affect how we parent. And Wendy, thanks for that poll that you gave earlier on. You asked people, how many of you turned out like your dad, like your mom? And there was quite a number of responses there. The question is, why did you turn out that way? And I'm going to dig into my content right away because I know our time is limited. Been married for 38 years, since 1985. We have 3 grown children. We have grandchildren, and we give this kind of seminars throughout Africa. That's an old photo in a living room in Uganda where we were speaking to families in a small gathering. I speak to as few as these in this gathering, but I also speak to tens of thousands as the opportunity makes itself available. So I'm very, very happy to speak to you today. Let me begin by saying that the relationship that we have with our parents in our growing up years, this relationship forms the template for all subsequent relationships. Now, I say parents here, but for some of you, it may not be parents. Maybe you are born by particular parents, but raised by a set of people who effectively have become your parents. And the relationship you have with those people who raised you, that relationship forms a template. We interpret relationships using that template. Impressions formed early in childhood, when we are vulnerable, continue into adulthood. And we often treat these impressions as if they are facts. You know, I met a young lady who was 20, and she was raised by a single mother. And when she asked her mother where her dad was, the mother told her at that young, tender age that her father had died. And she grew up with this impression, never questioning it, until she went to high school and met someone that looked somewhat like her and had a similar last name. And when she began to dig into it, she found it was her stepsister. Her father was alive, but was married to somebody else. She never questioned the impression in childhood, but only began to wrestle with it when she met somebody with a similar name who looked a little bit like her. She began to investigate who her parents were. So these impressions remain with us. And many times when you're going through parenting class, the memory comes back. We rarely test these impressions. The girl I just mentioned to you wasn't even trying to test it. She just happened to meet this person. The question is, how do these impressions affect how we relate and how we parent our children? Some of you already said, you parent the way your mother did. You parent the way your dad did. And let me add that may be despite the fact that you may not like the way you are parented. But the way you are parented, that is the reference point for parenting that you have. I know people who are in their line of training. I met a nurse one time who was a very competent nurse leading a wonderful team of nurses in Dallas, Texas. And then she came to me and she said to me, Stan, why is it that I always shout at my children? And I asked her, does your mom shout at you? Did she shout at you when you're growing up? She said, my mom still shouts at me even now. But then she asked me, how come I don't shout at my team in Dallas? And I said to her, when it comes to your team, your reference point is different. Your mentors in the medical field are your reference point. But when it comes to parenting, we default back to how we were raised, even though we may not like it. And we begin to reproduce after our own kind. So unless we are conscious of how we were parented, we cannot be effective in our parenting. So I'm going to take you back onto memory lane on how you were raised and see perhaps if you can connect with the reasons why you parent the way you do. Let me say that we are products of our past. However, our future is not, we are not doomed to be products of our past forever, because we can make decisions that affect our future, decisions that give us a positive future. I know people with a glorious background. I know people who have had, maybe their parents were involved in the church or were just very good moral people, and they were in society, they are well regarded. They even saved up a lot of money and took you to a very nice school. And it's in that school that you got to meet some very wealthy kids whose parents were uninvolved in their lives. And you began to take drugs and alcohol. And today, your future is very different from how you were raised. So you had a glorious future, but you made careless decisions, and now you're going down the drain. But I similarly know some people with a shameful past. What do you mean by a shameful past? If your father is a bank robber and your mother is a prostitute, you don't talk about that very much. But some of these people have turned out to be very noble citizens because other interventions came in. So you are not doomed by your past, even though your past has a great influence on your present and on your future. You can change the future by making decisions today that affect that future. So as I go through this, reflect on the home in which you are raised. Reflect on what kind of person you became. Notice my choice of words, the person you became, not the person you are. And there's a difference. The person I became And you can change the person you became by focusing on different inputs. So focus on the person that you became. And if you have children, and I'm aware there may be some here who don't have children, how did this process affect you in your child raising? I'm going to look at 4 basic approaches to parenting. There may be more described in many other books. I'm going to focus on these 4. I'm going to describe them, and I'm going to ask you if you identify with any of this. Are you ready for this? Wendy, are we ready to go?
Let's do it.
Wonderful. I'd like to hear some feedback. Thank you. I'll talk about dominant parents, negligent parents, permissive parents, and these 3, you'll be surprised to learn, are dysfunctional. And I'm doing some statistics right now, but so far it looks like 80% of Kenyan homes are dysfunctional. Then we're going to zero in on the loving but firm parent. This is the kind of parent we're aiming to become. So let's start on this. The dominant, sometimes called the authoritarian parent. Here are some synonyms for the word authoritarian. They are strict, they are severe, they are demanding, they are controlling, they are rigid, they are dictatorial. Does that sound like your dad? Send me some chats, type in some chats if this sounds like someone you know, someone who loves you very much, but they don't know how to love you because they are rigid, dictatorial, controlling, severe, and demanding. These people have very high standards, not just in parenting, but in their lives. And this is a very good thing, to have high standards. They have very high expectations. But they are not available to offer the warm and caring support that is needed to raise a child with a positive self-image. Now, when I say they are not available, I don't mean they are missing altogether. They are physically present, but distant emotionally. They have many rules in the home, but very few explanations to these rules. They overemphasize discipline, and much of this is corporal. They have high expectations, they control their children, they push their children hard. Performance is everything in this home. Is somebody coming to your mind? I'm going to pause later for you to give me some responses, but if something is coming to your mind, put it in the chat and Wendy will help us later with it. Dominant parents often provoke their children to anger, leading to a very discouraged child. The book of Colossians chapter 3 and verse 21, it says, "Fathers, do not aggravate your children." Why? Because they'll become discouraged. Notice that this note is being directed to fathers. What about mothers? Mothers can do it too, but the Lord saw it necessary to address the fathers. Don't do it, dads. Because if you do it, if you aggravate your children, they will become discouraged. Now tell me, my audience, what does a discouraged 2-year-old look like? What does a discouraged 5-year-old look like? What does a discouraged 3-year-old look like? What does it look like? Send me some charts. A discouraged 12-year-old, a discouraged 5-year-old, send me some charts. How would you identify a discouraged child? I'm going to pause and see some charts coming through. They are withdrawn, says one person. They are horrible. Yeah, not very nice to hang around. They have a low self-esteem. Maybe Anne Daniel, you could type something more. You said horrible. Help us to understand. They try to get attention, says Adebe. They are aggressive. They are sad. Yeah, thank you so much for all these responses. Now, let me look at 2 scales of these responses. One being very aggressive, and the other one being very withdrawn. They are on the opposite scales. One is aggressive, and they are being aggressive to other people. They are mean. It's a terrible thing when you meet a mean 6-year-old, a mean 4-year-old. They are not nice to be around. Kids are supposed to be nice to be around, but this particular kid has been raised by a very dominant dad, and she's just mean. That's on the one hand. On the other hand, you find a very withdrawn child. And what is the common emotion between the two? It's anger. They are angry children. They are angry. On the one side, they turn the anger to other people and become very aggressive. On the other, they turn the anger to self and can self-destruct. In the meantime, they are growing. Let me take an example of little Matthew. This is a little boy who is working hard. He's 12 years old, and he is working as hard as he can because he comes from a dominant family, dominant parent family, where performance is everything. He comes home with his paper. He's got 84% in math. And he says, Daddy, Daddy, I have 84% in math. Now, this young boy is celebrated in school. He's among the top 3 in class, and he's well celebrated. But he says, Daddy, Daddy, I got 84% in math. Now tell me, my audience, what's this boy's expectation when he says that? What does he expect his dad to do or to say? Send me some chats. Validate his hard work, says Helen. Yes, that's exactly right. Applause from the parents. That's exactly right, Lois. Congrats. Yeah, that's exactly. Thanks, guys. Thanks for your participation. That's his expectation. But dominant dad. 84, Jimmy, 84. And you want to be an engineer? You'll never make it with 84. Who had the highest? It was Monica. Monica? You're beaten by a girl? What's wrong with you, Jimmy? Now, what is dad's intention in speaking like this? His intention is to help Jimmy to rise up and score higher. But what is Jimmy hearing? That I will never be an engineer, that something is wrong with me, that I can't be beaten by a girl. Something is wrong with me. Listen carefully, parents. We judge ourselves by our intentions. Dad has good intentions, but your children do not hear your intentions. They hear your voice and they see your countenance, because when you're speaking like this, your countenance is not a smiling one. And guess what? You don't see your own face. So your child can see what you cannot see. And your child is thinking, oh my goodness, the people at school are lying to me. I will never make it, says my dad. So Jimmy goes back, sucks it in, and works hard. He works really hard. Next exam, he has 96%. 96. Daddy, Daddy, I got 96%. Surely, Daddy will applaud me. Daddy looks at that paper and asks, what did that girl get? Was her name Monica? Yeah, Monica. What did she get? She had 98. And Jimmy says this, looking down, kind of feeling ashamed that Monica beat him again. On the inside, Dad is smiling because the boy is doing better. But externally, he dare not show it because he has the erroneous understanding that if you praise your children, you spoil them. And he looks at the boy and says, you work hard, you make sure you beat that girl. So Jimmy's new target becomes beating that girl. And on the last exam, Jimmy has 100%. Surely you can't improve on that. He comes and places his paper where Dad can see it. Dad looks at it and says nothing. The dining room table, they're having dinner. Jimmy's mother looks at Jimmy's dad and said, have you seen Jimmy's paper? And Jimmy's dad says, yeah, saw it. Jimmy, how many others had 100? And Jimmy straightens up and said, there were 6 of us, including Monica. And Jimmy's expectation is applause. But Dad says, 6 of you got 100. That was an easy exam. We never used to get 100 in my day. Mom looks at dad. There's a tear coming down Jimmy's face. Jimmy walked to the bathroom to wash his face and comes back. Mom tells dad, "You're going to discourage that boy." Dad turns around to mom and says, "What do you know about raising boys? You see, he's now getting 100. Mom, yes, he's getting 100, but look at him. Did you even notice a tear coming down his face? Tension in that home. Performance, yes, but a lot of tension. That, my friend, is not positive parenting. It's a picture of our reality in Kenya. And if we had time, each of you could tell me your story. Each of you could tell me your story. But you don't have that time. So I'll keep going, keep sending chats. We'll look at them as we go along. Jimmy is discouraged, completely discouraged. Let me paint another picture here before I bring them together. Little Abigail is 16 years old. She comes and tells her mom, there's a party at school, Mom responds with a raised voice, "I don't care how many of your friends will be at the party. You are not going, and that's final." And Abigail looks at her mom, "You're shouting. Why are you shouting? I don't want to hear another word on this matter." Abigail knows that somehow she has rubbed mom the wrong way. She doesn't know what he said wrong. But you see, Abigail is 16 and mom 32, turning 33. Abigail was born when mom was 16, turning 17. Mom was well raised, but mom went to a party at age 16 with permission from her parents. And she was supposed to spend a night at a friend's house thereafter. She was briefed by her mother what to do and what not to do at that party. How there are some bad boys out there who will take advantage of innocent girls. Abigail's mom was very careful where she drank her juice from. She made sure she stayed away from alcohol. Ooh, but the bad boys had terrible plans. There was a big vat of punch that was awfully sweet. And Abigail saw everybody drinking from it, so she thought it was only the girls who were drinking from it. She doesn't remember the rest of the party, how it went. She just remembers waking up in her friend's house where she was supposed to sleep. A month later, she missed her period. That did not bother her because they were not regular anyway. But 2 months later, her waistline is changing and she's having morning sickness. She has no idea what morning sickness is. Her mother takes one look at her and asks her, "Are you pregnant?" Abigail is shocked and angry. "Mom, how can you ask me that? I don't sleep around." She went for pregnancy tests and she was pregnant. Mom and dad were prominent in church. They were ashamed by her pregnancy. They shipped her off to be raised by her aunt. I'm pausing for that to sink in. And now that memory seems to have faded until Abigail, her daughter, tells her, "May I go to a party?" And the memory of what happened comes up. And mom is reacting to Abigail because of the baggage in her growing up years. That is not positive parenting, is it? We carry baggage into our relationships. We use it in the raising of our children. We know we are hurting them, but we continue to use it. How do children raised like this turn out? They'll rank low in self-esteem. They reject the ideals of the parents. The parents have wonderful ideals, but they don't have a good way of connecting their children to these ideals. The parents are always rebuking the children. These children grow up and they have a broken spirit. They clam up. Sometimes they don't know what to say because they're so angry they can't even speak. Like a bearing. See that bearing in there? That bearing can function extremely well when there is an oil lubricant in there. But in a dominant parent home, the seal on the lubricant is broken. The oil has leaked out. The bearing has become dry. When you try to rotate it, it clumps up. And if you force it, it seizes. And if you force it further, it bursts. And that bursting is the rebellion, the outbursts of anger that you see in these children. Yes, you see them when they are young, but when they're young, they don't have a voice. You begin to see the rebellion when they become teenagers. And you think something horrible happens to people when they become teenagers. Nothing horrible happens. You begin to see an expression in their person depending on how they were raised. You raise them well, yes, they'll give some pushback as teenagers, but they will not be out of control. You raise them in a rough way and they struggle and will be out of control. Outbursts of anger are not uncommon in this home. These children, though they may be coming from a home with a dad and a mom, they're attracted to other children who are rebelling against their parents. You'll find that these children hang out with children of fathers who are alcoholics. They hang out with children from troubled families, and their parents don't understand. Why does my child hang out with children from homes that are dysfunctional? You know why? Because your home is dysfunctional and you don't even know it. These kids have something in common. They are angry. They are angry for different reasons, but they are angry nonetheless. They may become loud and defiant, always demanding their rights. As an adult, this child may become a terrible parent, not because they want to, but that's because the exposure of parenting that they received has made them a very angry, discouraged person. Notice the choice of words, may become, not will become, because we are not doomed by our background. We can make decisions that change our future. This child may not know what they've internalized. Like Abigail's mom didn't know what she had internalized until her daughter said, I would like to go to a party. You know, friends, we go through life and we record life. Our eyes are like the lenses of a camera. We record what we see. Our ears are like a microphone, and our brain is like a mighty big hard disk. And we have no idea what we are recording until the memory is triggered. And then we remember. And some of the memories can be good memories. Some of them can be nasty memories, but they are put in the background. Marriage often reveals these memories. Marriage has few or no problems of its own, but marriage reveals the challenges in the lives of those who are married. Small wonder the Bible says that those who are married will have many challenges in this life, not because marriage introduced them, but because marriage revealed them. Is this how you were raised? Send me some chats. What kind of person have you become? Wendy, let me hand over to you for just a couple of minutes. Maybe you can interact with us on the chat, read out some responses, and see how we can engage with this.
All right, thank you, Dr. First of all, I invite us all to just take a deep breath, man. This is real deep stuff, huh? I don't know how many of you are feeling like right now he's scratching some parts of our consciousness, of our past that some of us may or may have not dealt with. I am looking for your realness also in the chat. So talk to me. I can see there were people who are responding earlier, talking about acknowledgements, that these children are looking for acknowledgement from their parents. I'm also looking for acknowledgements from you. Are you still there? Is it getting hot where you're sitting? I was responding that mine was one of those fathers who asked, when I have 84, what happened to the other 16? It always felt like you could never quite please him enough. And so I know many of us can relate to the things that he's talking about. It just requires a level of vulnerability we may not be very used to. Susan Maua is saying it is a very hot where she's sitting, and I don't think it's about the heat wave in the country. Maureen says, I think I'm a child who tried to fit in campus, and that really messed me up. Thank you for sharing, Maureen. Lizzie is saying he has touched some deep truth. Share with us where he has touched you. Today
Thank
we are
you, Wendy.
moving from surface and going in deep. So feel free to type in the chat. If you want to be anonymous, you're welcome to also type directly to me. And when I share them, I will keep your anonymity, because it is in that sharing that we realize we are not alone, that there are others who have gone through the same experiences, others who have the same challenges. And then together we can carve a new path, because like Dr. said, we are products of our past, but we can choose how we respond every day and create a new future in the decisions we make for ourselves and for our children currently.
Thank you,
Edna said
Wendy.
something
Oh my-
insightful
Go
so
ahead,
far,
go
so
ahead.
going Dakari.
Yes, yes. And let me just say to some of you, you know, Wendy asked the question earlier on, is attending parenting classes necessary? And some people say, my parents never did, and I turned out okay. After today's session, you may want to evaluate whether or not you turned out okay. But let me move on. Let me move on and make some bold statements here that are going to help us with our interpreting what things are going on. You see, people raised in this environment can be very discouraged relationally, but they may be great performers succeeding in their jobs, but they struggle with their relationships. They have never even thought about it, but that's what's going on. Anger characterizes some of the individuals. Broken relationships are the norm. Multiple sexual relationships are not unusual. They'll do anything to succeed, but true love is often very evasive for them. Now listen carefully, my audience. True success is not measured in net worth. It is not measured in the position in your company. It is not measured by education. True success is measured in relationships. And a person who is bankrupt in relationships is bankrupt indeed. As a matter of fact, when people commit suicide, they have run out of relational capital. We need to be people who raise up a generation that can relate to one another. You are better off with a B student who is relational than an A student who is discouraged and turning to alcohol as a way of coping with life. The book of Luke in chapter 16 and verse 11, it's an interesting question. If therefore you have not been faithful in the unrighteous mammon, who will commit to you the true riches? Mammon is money. If you are not faithful with money, who will entrust to you true riches? As if to suggest that true riches have nothing to do with money. You know, when you see people stressed in life, it has part of it to do with the circumstances they're going through, but their ability to bounce back from the stress has a lot to do with how they were raised. COVID saw a lot of stressed people that ended up with mental illness, but some people were stressed and they bounced back. In 1983, there's an article in the Time magazine where they interviewed 1,300 doctors that had been raised, that had trained at the Johns Hopkins University. And these doctors had suffered hypertension, coronary heart disease, malignant tumors, mental illness, and some of them had committed suicide. And Johns Hopkins being a medical place, they were looking for a medical reason. But someone analyzed these conditions and they realized there's one thing in common with these conditions: stress. What is stress? The difference between what you expect and what you get. The difference between the positive that you expect and what you actually get. And as they began to research as to what really is the common factor, they found that a lack of closeness to parents was the issue with all these people, and especially the father. When parents are close to a child, and when especially a dad is close to his children, you build into those children a form of resilience. They know where to turn to when things are hot. Yes, they may make some really bad decisions. The prodigal son made some bad decisions, but he came to his senses and went back to his father because home was a very stable place. If home was not stable and you make those bad decisions, you go further and further away from home. You want a stable family situation whereby if your children make bad decisions, they can come back home because they know you are a stabilizer. But for you to be a stabilizer, you have to be hooked into that which is stable. The relief options for stressed people, NACADA is very much aware of them. Drugs, alcohol, partying, sex, overeating, indulgence in social media. They start off really innocent and they soon become an addiction. And you have to have an entire national authority put together to help people in this situation because the parenting in their homes failed. And friends, we can turn this thing around. Yes, we can. We try to, in our organization, both at the Navigators and at Raising Future Parents, we want to transform the nation one person at a time, one family at a time. Does someone's name come to your mind who needs this kind of help? If they do, contact NACADA. NACADA knows how to reach me. Let me move on to the negligent parent, and I won't spend as much time with this one because a lot of parents in Kenya are dominant. But a lot of them are both dominant and negligent. When I describe this one, you won't like it because this particular parent lives in a neighborhood. These parents expect little and offer little to their children. There are four main reasons for negligence. There are more than four, but I'll talk about four. I'll actually zero in on just one. One is the high rate of divorce. Or maybe it's not divorce. There's just, as Kenyans would call it, mpango wa kando. Wendy, how do you say that to our Ethiopian audience? What's mpango wa kando?
Oh, the woman on the side. Usually it is women.
Yes.
The plan on the side.
Yes, it's a man.
The side chick.
Yes. They are married, they look happily married, but they have another family somewhere. They are not divorced, but they have another family they are committed to. And the first family has no idea. The second family often has an idea. That's one reason. The second reason is an increase in the number of both parents working away from home. And I'm going to zero in on that in just a moment. You see, in a big city like Nairobi or Addis Ababa or Lusaka or wherever our audience is listening from, for you to be at work at 8 o'clock, you often have to leave home at 6. You have to get up at 5 to be ready and get those kids ready. And you are gone from 6 o'clock and you come back home, you leave work at 5. Some of you delay the office because there's so much traffic. And instead of spending 2 hours in traffic, you'd rather delay in the office for half an hour and just spend an hour and a half in traffic. You're spending less fuel. So you get back home at 7:30 or 8. Now I want you to visualize a home with a 2-year-old. The 2-year-old wakes up at 7, an hour after you've left. And the 2-year-old is ready to go back to bed at 8 p.m., but you call home and you tell the house help, no, don't let them go to bed. I have to come and see them. And so this 2-year-old is dozing as you come home, and you spend 1 hour with them before they go to bed. let me say it is the worst hour of the day. Why is it the worst hour? Because both you and the child are tired. But who did this child spend 10 hours with? 10 wakeful hours. They did take a nap, 10 wakeful hours. They spend them with house help. Now, if you're tuning in from Europe or the US, you may not identify with the concept of house help. But here in Africa, there's such high unemployment and low wages that people will work as house helps for a career. Now, I don't know if any of you know a house help whose goal in life was to be a house help. Most of them are very intelligent people, but they've just come from a challenging background. They couldn't make it through school because of school fees. They couldn't make it because they had a child and their parents said, no more going to school. There is a problem somewhere. So this person is coming to your house already frustrated. Your 2-year-old is difficult to take care of. This house help follows them around with a spoon, trying to feed them. It takes a whole hour to feed them breakfast. They are frustrated by the child. This same house help is the one who got up at 5 a.m. to fix you breakfast so you can leave at 6. And when you come back at 8 o'clock and stay up until 9 and eat your dinner, they stay up an extra hour to do dishes. And so they go to bed at 10 p.m. They're awake at 5 a.m. They're working 17 hours a day. Their salary is frustrating. So they came frustrated. Your 2-year-old is frustrating them. Their salary is frustrating. And I don't know about your neighborhood, but I know that in many neighborhoods, the lady of the house is not kind to the house help. And the man of the house is indifferent. If he's not having an affair with her, he's indifferent. That's another frustration. Let's talk about salary. Send me charts on this one. The best paid house helps in Kenya, how much do they earn? Best paid. I'm not talking about yours, but best paid. How much do they earn? I'm waiting for some charts here. $27,000, says Lois. 27,000. For those of you from outside of Kenya, that is 55,000. I see from Lizzie. 55,000 would be like $300, best paid. But what is the average income? Average for house help in Kenya? Drake, you say 25,000. That's probably best paid. Average 5,000 to 10,000 shillings. Ooh la la. Our dollar these days is about 150. So you're talking about $50 to $75. Her salary is frustrating. But let's go back to the best paid. And someone quoted 55,000. Is that a good salary for 17 hours a day? I dare say even the best paid are poorly paid. But this is the person who spends 10 wakeful hours with your child every single day. I'm going to skip that next slide and just say that, you know, children want to be like adults and they will emulate whichever adult they're exposed to. So here's my question for you. Who is your child emulating? Who is your child trying to become? In a Kenyan context, it is not uncommon for house help to come and stay for 3 or 4 months, or maybe just a few weeks and then go. Because the neighbor next door offered them $10 extra on their salary. On a salary of $50, $10 is a 20% increase. And so in your house, your child is being raised by passerbys. The different house helps coming through. By the end of the year, 8 of them have come through. In the meantime, the child is growing. The parents come home. They don't just have a 2-year-old. They also have a 6 and an 8 and a 12-year-old. The 12-year-old is asking, Mom, can you help with my math? Mom says, I have homework of my own. Ask your teacher. Ask your dad when he comes in. Dad comes in. Can you help me, Dad? I'm so tired. I need to go back to work. I'm leaving shortly. Get, fill in the blanks, the house help to help. That doesn't quite say that, but the house help becomes this one person whom this child looks at. He can't even ask her, but she sympathizes and begins to help your child with the homework. For no extra pay, she's become tutor. Dad turns to that child. Why are you asking for me to help you? Don't you pay attention in class? Leave it a blank. We'll ask the teacher tomorrow. That's why we are paying school fees. In the meantime, the child is growing. Here's a question for you. How do children with negligent parent backgrounds turn out? Remember, parents, remember, none of the negligent parents ever considers themselves negligent. They love their children. They're just not present to love them. They are gone all the time. The neglect teaches the child that they are not worth spending time with. They can't quite articulate it, but all they can say is that mom and dad have time for everybody except me. The child becomes insecure because the parents are never present or predictable. These parents come back and they are stressed by work and they tend to be harsh in their communication, not necessarily harsh to the child, but harsh to the house help. But the child is listening in. House help is the child's best friend because they spend time together. The harshness and neglect wounds the child's spirit, resulting in rebellion. The child has no self-respect because he's not respected and has not learned to control himself. In the meantime, they are growing. The parents make many promises, but they can't keep them because their schedule is not in their hands. Many broken promises, leaving the child with a low self-esteem. The child tends to do poorly in school, but the parent is too busy to even notice it. This child has little or no motivation. Do you know a person who was raised like this? Is that person in this meeting? As you reflect on this parenting style, you realize these children were hardly raised. Yes, their parents provided for them. Yes, their parents had great intentions, but these children just grew up. They basically just raised themselves. Send me some chats. Is this how you were raised? Who really raised you? You've always said it was your parents, but pause. Who really raised you? Where were your parents when you were growing up? My intention is not to make you feel guilty, but in talking about positive parenting, we must reflect on where we came from and understand what kind of people that we became. Sylvia says she was raised by boarding school. And you know, many Kenyan children were raised like that. Eseta says in Ethiopia, the household gets $50 to $60, not too different from here. Rose says she was raised by house help. Elizabeth, you feel like you walked through life. Yeah. Now remember, although you're a product of your past, you must not be doomed by that past. You can make decisions that change the future. 10 years from now, this year will be referred to us as the past. So you can make decisions today. James says he simply grew up. Joseph says, mom. Now, very interesting. Thanks, Joseph, for posting that. Few people post the person who raised them because the parents weren't there. Boarding school raised some of you from class 4 all the way. Let me zero in on the permissive and sometimes called the indulgent parent. This parent is loved by the children when they're young. But when they get older, they say, oh no, these kids have no self-control because they were raised by a permissive parent. I'm going to read for you a short story, very short, just 2 verses from the book of Kings. It says, now Adonijah Adonijah sounds Nigerian, right? But he was David's son. Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, I'll be king. So he got chariots and horses ready, and with 50 men to run ahead of him. Now notice verse 6. His father, King David, had never rebuked him by asking, why do you behave as you do? Another version says he had never disciplined him. He was also very handsome and was born next after Absalom. I wonder if that has anything to do with anything. Why is it being mentioned here? Let me tell you why I think it's being mentioned. You see, when you've got a very beautiful child, or you've got a very talented child, a very gifted child, most parents tend not to discipline that child because they think that discipline may somehow rob the child of the gift or the beauty. Here is Adonijah wanting to ascend to the throne while his father was still alive, because his father had never disciplined him in the growing up years. And we're not talking about some horrible father. King David was a man after God's own heart, but not a very good parent. You don't have to be on the NACADA list of people addicted to alcohol to be a bad parent. You could be a very nice person, addicted to nothing, but just unavailable to your children, completely distracted. You see, permissive parents are usually very warm and supportive. They are very big on emotional support, but they expect very little from their children. They have rules, they have expectations, but they are very weak on establishing or enforcing those rules or setting limits to their children. Now, they threaten their children. If you keep doing that, mom is going to punish you. I'm going to spank you, says the mom, but she'll never spank that child. You wait till your dad comes home and I'm going to tell dad. And the child is wondering, what's going to happen to me when dad comes home? And then dad comes home and nothing happens. You know why these parents are like this? Some of them were raised by dominant parents and saw a lot of emotional damage in their growing up years and made a decision, I will never raise my children in the way my dad raised me. So they come from a dominant parent home and become the exact opposite. They become permissive. But some of them were raised in a very functional home, but they are now married to a very dominant man or a very dominant woman. And they're trying to balance it out for the children. So they become permissive. When the dominant parent is away, the child can get anything they want. And they think that by so doing, they are loving on that child. They're destroying that child. They have no idea. But on the positive side, they are very supportive. They work with the child. They are warm. They are loving. They're understanding. But they just don't give the child the boundaries that the child needs to be able to grow up with proper self-esteem. The child is watching television and the permissive parent knows they are supposed to ask them to put it off, but they don't have the guts to do that. So they tiptoe around that child. Oh, I know you're staying up late tonight. I know you like this show. What time is it ending? Oh, another 20 minutes, mom. Okay, all right. Just put off the television. I'm going to bed. But 2 hours later, mom wakes up to go to the bathroom, and this child is still in front of the TV. Mom could have said, put off that television and go to bed. But the child will protest, and permissive parents can't bear to hear a child crying. Or maybe it's permissive dad, and mom is fixing this meal, and an 8-year-old Tony wants ice cream. It's 7 o'clock and mom says, Tony, you can't have ice cream now. We are having dinner in 10 minutes. And Tony is arguing with mom. And then Tony hears dad coming in and dad is permissive. And Tony begins to cry. And dad asks in Swahili, mtoto analia kwa nini? Why is this child crying? Baba Tony, he wants ice cream at this time. I can't give him ice cream. We have to have our meal first. Permissive dad, give it to him. You know, I grew up with no ice cream. Give it to me, or is it finished? I can go get some more. Permissive dad never responds with any boundaries. They give the child whatever they want, and this child gives the mom a funny grin and gets his ice cream. And as mom predicted, is unable to eat their dinner. And I could go on with more examples, but I have limited time. I only have, until 4:15. I want to go until 4:20, Wendy, 4:20. I won't exceed too much. I'll stay within that time. How do children raised by permissive parents turn out? So the child realizes that he's in the driver's seat and he can manipulate parents any way he wants. If I want something, mom has no backbone, dad has no backbone. Dad doesn't have the gut to say no to me. I'll just cry for it. I'll make a big fuss and I'll get what I want. This child develops insecurity. It's like leaning on a falling wall or relying on a bad tooth when you've been invited for nyama choma. You will not enjoy that nyama choma. The child knows how to manipulate the rules since they are not firm. They know that when the permissive parent comes in, the other one is going to melt away. And the strong-willed child has a very hard time in that home because the strong-willed child likes order and there is no boundaries in that home. I want you to look at that road. It looks like the road to Naivasha through the escarpment. I think it's a different one. But you can see on the one side, on the right side, there's a mountain. On the left, there's a valley. And the road constructors made sure they put a wall barricade on the left so that no cars roll down the valley. And so when drivers are driving on this road, they have confidence. They are driving in the confines of the mountain and the wall. They feel confident. It doesn't even cross their mind that they could roll into the valley. Now, this road is safe and the drivers get to use the entire road. Even if a big truck is oncoming, this driver can move to the left. They know how far to move because they can see the boundary. But a permissive parent home has no boundaries. And because of that, they limit where the child can grow. That path is a beautiful path. But if you start running on that path, you have to run more towards the left where there should be a bit of boundary. You are safer on this particular path with boundaries on both sides. With the previous one, you feel like you can fall. Somebody kindly mute yourselves. Thank you so much. How are you doing? How are you doing? Were you raised by a dominant parent? Were you raised by a negligent parent? Were you raised by a permissive parent? Those three are dysfunctional. They are not positive parenting. What impact has your upbringing had on you as a person? I'm going to spend the last few minutes that we have talking about the loving but firm parent. And I'm using terminology here that everybody can identify with. These people are also called authoritative parents as opposed to the authoritarian whom we don't want to become. Here are some synonyms for the word authoritative. They are confident. They are convincing. They are respected and respectful. They are influential. Most parents think this is who they are. Aha, remember, you judge yourself by your intentions. If you don't know who you really are, ask your spouse, ask your child. And when they tell you, don't fight back. Don't fight back. Children don't experience your intentions, they experience your actions. These parents usually have clearly defined rules and have clearly defined limits and standards. And in this respect, they are very, very similar to the dominant. However, they take time to train their children to understand and achieve the standard. They make time. That's the biggest difference. They are not pushy, Performance is not everything, but their children end up performing anyway because the environment at home promotes it. They take time. They give clear warnings. Jimmy, if you don't stop shouting at your mom, I will punish you. They talk in a normal voice because Jimmy is not deaf. They don't scream at their parents, at their children. They may have been raised by dominant parents, but they have come to Mukolwe's parenting class and have met Mukolwe and Mwongera and Naburiri and others, Nadidas, and they have tried to reorientate you to a different kind of parenting style. This particular parent gives support to the children by expressing affection verbally, by giving appropriate physical touch, by listening to the child until the child feels understood. That is positive parenting. The parent is, number one, available. Number two, involved. Number three, completely engaged with this child. This parent is a healthy combination of dominant. They have taken the good thing of dominant, discarding the horrible part of it, and they have taken the positive part of permissive and have become their own parent. They are firm, but they are loving. When you talk to a child from that home, how was growing up? Say, it was pretty good. Give me some memories of your growing up, and they'll share with you the positive memories. And you ask, were you ever punished by your parents? Oh yeah, we were. But that is not the stark memory in their mind. It's almost like a blip, but the fond memories, the things they did together in that home. This child comes home, daddy, I got 84%. And they get a well done. Notice that high five, body touch, maybe it's a hug. And dad says, let me look at your paper. And Wendy, you said your dad will ask you what happened to the other 16%. This dad is saying to this child, hey, Jimmy, you had 25 questions and you only missed 4. See how he's presenting it? You only missed 4. That's how you got 84%. Yeah, dad, I only missed 4. And Jimmy's waiting to hear what else is dad going to come up with. And dad, or maybe it's mom, says, Jimmy, the 4 that you missed, they are all multiplication. Yeah, dad, remember the week I was down with malaria? That's when the teacher covered multiplication. Aha. Dad, parent, and child are communicating. This parent wants the child to do better, but they are not just pushing the child. They are communicating to find out where is the challenge. And so after dinner, dad and Jimmy are doing the math tables. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4 is 12. Is dad tired? Of course he is. Is Jimmy tired? You bet he is. But dad must do what dad must do. Dad has 2 jobs, one that earns him a living and one that gives him plenty of pleasure. The raising of children is a full-time job. And dad is doing this, and in the meantime, the child is growing. Or let's go back to Abigail. But now Abigail is in a firm but loving home. You said all the girls were the party. Yeah, mom. I'd like to hear some more about this party first. Let's talk about dinner. Yes, this particular Abigail came from the exact same background, but mom has dealt with her baggage. She can control her emotions. She thinks her answer is going to be no, but she's engaging with her daughter to bring her to the place where the no answer is easy to accept. How do children raised like this turn out? You see, the warm support and the clearly defined rules build the child's self-respect. The child is content because the child has known how to control themselves. There's that word control again. Remember, in the permissive parent home, there are no boundaries. But in this home, there are boundaries, but the child knows why the boundaries are there. All of life has boundaries. Rebellious people today do not like boundaries, but life has boundaries. The child's life is more secure because the child realizes that although the rules are unbending, They understand the principles behind the rules. For example, when the traffic lights are red for you, you better stop. You know why? Because they are green for somebody else. You run a red light, you meet somebody else. There's a crash that happens. Red lights were not designed to delay you from where you're going. The reason you are late is because you started off late. Haha, isn't that true? These children will rank high in self-respect. They have a capacity to conform to authority. And I'm not saying that they cannot challenge authority. They can work with authority and they can learn to challenge it in a redemptive way. They can conform to authority at school, at church, with government, and eventually when they run their own company, they'll run it well. They have a greater interest in their parents' faith because they have seen the parents functional in their home. They are less likely to join a rebellious group. They love themselves, but they don't focus on themselves. When they look at others, they see the best in others. They are not self-focused because they were raised in a loving but firm home. There are three important factors in child raising. We do need to set clearly defined rules with clear consequences of what will happen when the rules are broken. But we need a commitment to love each child in a warm, affectionate, and supportive way. But there is no substitute for your personal presence. Friends, we can delegate tasks, but we must not delegate relationships. Positive parenting involves leading, developing, and caring for those children. And remember, we reproduce after our own kind. So take a good look at yourself and ask yourself, if your children turned out to be just like you, would you be proud or ashamed? If the answer is ashamed, you need time to raise yourself up. Positive parenting comes from children, from parents who are raised, and you may need to raise yourself up and to qualify yourself to raise your children. As a Christian, I have learned that if I continue in God's word, I get to know the truth, and the truth sets me free. The truth of the source of my baggage, I get to know it, and I get to deal with it. Many parents have baggage that they are unable to work with. It is 22 minutes after the hour, and I'd like to respect the time of those who gave it to me. I had a video to play for 5 minutes, but I think even without it, we are good to go. Over to you, Wendy.
Thank you, Dr. Ari. I think we can still share that video after we wrap up. And I think it's really key to hear the feedback of those who are on. I have been receiving some direct messages. I have, there are people who have joined us also on YouTube. And people are really touched in difficult ways to mention by what you have said. And I remember when I took your parenting class 9 years ago, the day you calculated those hours that my child will spend, and at that point, she was an infant, the amount of time she will spend with my house help compared to myself, I wanted to submit my resignation to NACADA and say, I am now going to do my full-time job. And I remember you said that, you're not doing it to make us feel guilty or like awful parents, but kind of as a reality check. And from then on, I needed to be more intentional and see if truly I have been given this gift of raising a child, I'm going to have to make time to do it. I can't say there's no time, because before I know it, the child will be gone, raised by me or grown up like a weed. And that was a huge reality check from me. So before we play the video, I would like to, get some questions and answers. People may have answers or may have questions they would like because the video is us watching. And there may be people here who feel, before Dr. Mukolwe, you sign off, I really need this kind of a response or a response to this question. So please, if you are there and you have something you would like to ask before we close today's session, may you raise your hand boldly, type in the chat, so that we don't close this session without you having expressed what's in your heart. I appreciate the direct messages that I have received. I see people saying more time, more time. We always need more time. But then I have found sometimes you need to also go deeper with the things that you receive in the little time and act on them. In the acting is where things change, not just in the listening and gaining the knowledge. So any questions from you guys? Anyone who wants to raise their hand? Helen, you would like to ask about disciplining. Would you like to ask that now, or do you want to ask later? Or are you suggesting it as a topic for another day? Disciplining is a whole lesson in itself, just like today. Today, we just delved into parenting styles, how we were parented, and how that could be influencing our own parenting styles. Discipline is also a whole other webinar that we can tackle next time also. But if you have a specific question right now that you would like to, please, Helen, go ahead and unmute and ask.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Lizzie, and my question is, if I've been a dominant parent, and from this discussion, I want to be that loving, firm parent, and my kids are now preteens, how far is the damage? And yeah, and is there, how do I make up? Thank you.
Lizzie, thanks for being so honest. Yes, the damage is there. Let's not tiptoe around it. However, Lizzie, children are very forgiving. They are very, very forgiving when they notice the transformation in parents. So I would urge you, take a class on parenting. And within the class, we have small groups where people talk through these issues. And as you talk through the issues, you realize where you are being very hard on your children. You realize how you are damaging your children. And you'll get the help to change. Once you change as a parent, the children begin to change because you change the environment. There are parents who say, oh, when I call my children, they ignore me. The first time a question I ask them is, do you shout at them? And they say, yeah, I do. Then I ask them, are they deaf? They say, no, they are not. Why do you shout? Oh, because they don't listen to me. I tell you, they don't listen to you because you're shouting. Change it. Tell your children, we're changing rules in this home, children. I'm going to be calling you once and you'll respond, and I will not shout. Try that. Very, very simple. And you go back and you call them by name once and you don't repeat. And they say, yes, mom. Yes, dad. They're thinking, what happened here? It is you who changed. And the children want to be just like adults, but they ignore you when you shout at them. Is that helpful, Lizzie?
Yes, it is. And I've actually signed up for the Courageous Parenting. Yes. And I know this will transform a big thing in me. Thank you.
Lizzie, let me mention that particular one is ongoing right now. There'll be another one coming up in August, but we have a YouTube channel that we just started, and we are posting videos weekly from Courageous Parenting. Just go to YouTube and Google Raising Future Parents YouTube, and you'll find us there. I even posted a video this morning. They are short videos, but when you listen to them one after the other, they make a full message. They're not motivational videos. They're actually sound teaching. Back to you, Wendy.
Right. Thank you. I can see that's also in line with what Helen wanted to ask, because she was saying in relation to disciplining, she wanted to know, how do you get them to listen without shouting? So you have answered also another question that she had. Several people are asking if they'll get a recording. The recording, we are live on YouTube and will also be posted on YouTube. So you can be able to access there. People want to know if they'll get some notes from you, Daktari, which we can share with them on email because they registered?
No, I won't share notes, but they can buy a book at a discount.
Okay,
And they'll
great.
be
And
able
then
to
also
come.
on
Yeah.
YouTube, they can go and
Yes.
rewatch it and take notes and, you know, be able to learn from that. Sometimes I find the notes that I take, because I take them the way I was understanding them, can be even more helpful. All right, we have a question from Esther. Esther, please go ahead.
Hello.
Hi, Esther.
Hi.
We can hear you here.
Hello.
Is that you, Esther, or little Esther?
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I had stepped out. Sorry. I'm so sorry.
Okay, did you have a question, or it's your little one who has a question?
He's just made me realize when you're saying, we were listening with him, when you're saying shouting, you're just looking at me like,
Wacha kunishautia mama.
yeah, that to delve, it has really hit me. Thank you.
All right, people. Change is not easy, but it is possible. Don't leave here feeling discouraged. The idea is that you feel empowered, that there is something you are able to do and make a difference with. So I just wanted to share some resources with you from both sides, NACADA and also Raising Future Parents. We have materials you can access from our website. If you go to our website under Info Hub, you will find publications where you can be able to download booklets that we have done on positive parenting. These booklets are also available for children of different ages, from 6 to 8, 9 to 12, 13 to 15, 16 to 18, because each of these developmental stages needs a different approach. And then there's also the parent's guide. So you're welcome to download these and use them for your children of different ages. Give them the one that is appropriate, read it through with them. It's a great way to have these discussions if you haven't already. And if you have started, that is awesome. You can boost them anytime you're watching TV with them, seeing things around, even news. All of these are things that we can have conversation, meaningful conversation with our children on. We have a helpline, 1192. If you need to talk to somebody about alcohol and drug abuse, how to get help for you or a loved one, we are open 24 hours a day. Kindly call. It is toll-free without charges from Safaricom or Telcom. So we encourage you to use that, available 24 hours. In the chat, this is the final thing we're asking for you to type in the chat. What has been your biggest takeaway from today's webinar as we close the webinar? So you can type that, and then you can get the Raising Future Parents and other books from the Navigators in Nairobi. They are based off Ngong Road on Kinaruma. You can also purchase them over the website for Raising Future Parents. You can email them should you want to invite him over using parenting@raisingfutureparents.com. If you're an Amazonian, you can also buy the book over Amazon. Yes, so that is a quick how to reach us. We are having ongoing conversations online, so you can find us on NACADA Kenya. This week is the National Prevention Week, where we are celebrating prevention, our families, our schools, our workplaces, our community. How can we create a sustainable future for humanity? So share with us your prevention story, online story yako. You can find us on most social media with our handle of NACADA Kenya. We thank you so much for attending. And before you go, let me just get another vote. If you're ready for the video, we can do the video. And then I would like to invite my director to just say thank you to all of you who have attended. Stephen and Reed, your hands are up. Let's try to keep it at 30 seconds, please, so we can respect the time that was set out. Stephen, and then we listen to Anne.
Yeah, Wendy, I'll keep it short.
Thank you.
Very shortly, I'm asking,
Oh,
apart
Yes,
from those
Andre.
who are who you want to attend your classes, I'm wondering whether you are collaborating with the Ministry of Labor and Social Development and the Ministry of Education and religious bodies, so that such education is very, 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 very necessary even in the school curriculum.
Yes, ma'am. We just, the Ministry of Social Services has produced a national parenting manual, and
Yeah.
I was co-chair to the committee. So they did invite us to participate in that. There were a lot of us from the private sector, and I was invited, and we did participate in that. Ministry of Education, I am a consultant with KICD on family engagement program, and we do interact pretty often, from time to time with KICD. And now we are linking up with NACADA. We are available. You see, we can't push ourselves to government, but now government is inviting us, and we want to transform this nation one family at a time. It is possible. Don't just change leaders, raise leaders.
But we need that
Awesome.
kind of advocacy from you. Because if you follow up, there is the family, there are 3 institutions of God. I believe you know God.
I do. He also knows me.
Yes.
We have the religious bodies. We have the family, but the family is not in as a ministry in the constitution, but we have the other 3 arms of the government in the constitution. So now the family, which is the major institution, I feel you need to do a lot of advocacy to make sure that the program is in the KICD to educate. Myself, I call it family career education.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your feedback. And also as NACADA, we have been working with KICD to influence the curriculum and how to get life skills in there. Remember, KICD is curriculum largely for schools, which is aiming at students or pupils. So the content there is very different from parenting. We also work with different schools to reach parents. We have guidelines we have developed with Ministry of Education on what needs to be done at the school level that also includes parents, because schools and parents or families need to work together. So we are welcome for more ideas. We partner with also with faith-based institutions at different levels, and not just Christian, but also Hindu and Muslim and all of that. Any contributions you'd like to make to that discussion, and we welcome greatly. You can seek us either at the headquarters or our regional offices that are in 9 different counties. So we'll listen to Stephen, and then please set up your video, Daktari. Yes, Stephen, go ahead.
Wendy, mine is just short. I would like to understand how you would navigate for a partner who's not willing to change when it comes to parenting.
It's a tough situation to be in, but people respond to us depending on how we present ourselves to them. You remember during the COVID season, you present a fist and you get a fist back. You weren't shaking hands. So let me urge you to change yourself. Be the best possible husband, best possible father. And when the kids see you change, they'll begin to change. When your partner sees you change, they will want to change. And the reason they are resistant is because they had a very difficult background. Win them over by a positive, loving example. Don't try to change them. You can't change anyone. People have to make up their mind to change, but they need to see someone who is drawing them out, and you can be that person.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Ari. Sometimes when people see us change, we also empower them and give them the courage to know change is possible, and they can also do the same. All right, as Dr. Ari is setting up the video, I'd like to call on my director. Okay. I can see my director is even sending me a message here. So director, would you like to say hello and thank everybody for attending as we wind up? Director Orlando?
Yes, thank you very much, Wendy. Thank you so much, Dr. Mukolwe. I hope I can be heard.
Perfectly
Yes, you
well,
can
thank
hear.
you.
Daktari, that was just awesome. It was so awesome. Thank you for helping us to just reflect on ourselves, reflect on our parenting, those things that you'd never reflected upon. I like the question where you actually asked us if you are not, you wouldn't want your children to be the way the way you are, then it's sort of like an opportunity to self-introspect. Thank you. And I really enjoyed the examples using real life children, real life situations that we take for granted. Barikiwa sana.